So have our last game tomorrow. So I look forward to, getting to know all of you. And I'm looking forward to a great year.
Thanks, Des. Any questions about COVID? Des knows all the answers due to what the basketball program has been going through this year on and off with other teams. And, it's a little too soon to make that joke with Des yet, but I think in a couple weeks you'll be able to do it. So, but yeah, no, in all seriousness, Des is very well versed in the COVID regulations and things like that. And he'll do a great job helping you and answering your questions. So I'm trying to share with you our schedule. Is that on your screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you see it. So this schedule is put together very specifically on behalf of parents, and behalf of kids, and behalf of coaches. So the times that you see here are very important. And the reason for that is we share the track with our high school. Our high school kids are going to be doing some of their running items during that 3:20 to 4:15 time period that you see there. They'll be doing their running then. So we're doing a lot of our field event work during that time. Okay. And then we're going to transition out from about 4:15 to 4:30. We'll kind of wrap up with our coaches, gather our materials. And then if you don't have to do sprints or relays on a given day, because you're not in a sprint or you're not in a relay, then you will go home at 4:30. So parents, everybody, we really want everybody to do, either distance running or one of our field events if possible. And again, you can work with the coaches on this if you have an exception, but that means most people will go right after school on the days that it says, where it says walk there from 3 to 3:20. And then at 4:30 to 5 or 5:15, people who do sprints or relays or something like that, they will stay and get their sprint work during that time, because that's when the high school teams will be doing all of their field events. So we have to flip flop where we are with our field events and our running, so we don't run into the high school kids, because our team's about 60 students and their team is a little bit bigger than that. So we have to really be on point with when we're coming and what we're doing. So as you can see on a given day, so like next week, the 22nd, from 3 to 3:20, the kids are all going to walk. Now, what walking means, and we're going to talk about this a little later with transportation, is we're going to have one coach at the front of the line, one coach at the back of the line, and we have to walk on the sidewalks only through the neighborhood over to the high school. That takes us about 20 minutes to get changed and to walk over and get settled at the middle school. Now, what is really important about that is the reason we have coaches walk with them is because sometimes, and I don't know if you're going to believe this or not, but sometimes middle school students don't follow the walking rules. Okay. And they cut across roads, or they play games and say, hey, I bet you won't run past that car, or I bet you won't do, I don't know, maybe it's hard for you to believe, but middle school kids do that. And so we've had some issues in our neighborhood with people calling, giving us a hard time, saying our kids are crazy. And so we need to make sure the kids walk in the line and they cross at the crosswalks and all of those things. Number one, for their safety. And number two, because we want to be good ambassadors of our school. And so if your child's having a little trouble following those rules after a day or two, and they've been asked a couple of times, we might have to have you pick them up and drive them. We might not allow them to walk. So please, for their safety and, for the reputation of our school, let's make sure that we're encouraging our kids to do the right thing when they're walking and follow the rules and keep themselves safe, so we can do that. So on those days, as you can see, so the first 2 days next week are Monday and Wednesday. We're going to walk. And these are the events that are going to be happening. So if you don't know if you're going to like one of those as a 7th and 8th grader, because you see here, this is 7th and 8th grade only on these days. And so with a 7th and 8th grader, you're going to go from 3 o'clock, walk over. We're going to do high jump, long jump. Distance runners are going to do their thing. Our hurdle coach is going to be there on that Monday. Usually most Mondays, the hurdle coach will be there. So you can work on those things. Your child can. And then at 4:30, if they want to try some sprints, which would be like 100 meter, 200 meter, and I think maybe even up to 400, coaches will tell you about that. but sprinters will stay and work on their conditioning for those sprinting in those sprinting runs. And then you pick them up 5:15. So if your child is not going to sprint, or if they're a distance runner only, they'll be done at 4:30, and you pick them up at the stadium. Okay. So you can see what happens on every single day here. And we really need your support to make sure that your child, is getting double checked by you on which days they're supposed to go. Some days they're going to be 3 days a week with all those things. Someday, and on those 3 days a week, 2 of them, if they're sprinter, they're going to stay, but not on that other day. And that's usually because we have an issue at the stadium. We've got a lacrosse game, or we've got some kind of meet of some kind, or some kind of soccer game. So I can't have them stay later. Does that make sense? So I'm not trying to mess with your schedule or your routine, but at the same time, we have a lot of things happening at our stadium. So I had to be very specific with our times and dates. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. And you can follow that. What we're going to do with this is I'm going to share it to the whole email list. So you can be a viewer of it, so that, you can check it any day of the week at any time. You can be a viewer of it. And I really would encourage you to keep it as a Google Doc if possible, because if we have to make a change, it'll show up live. If you have a printed schedule on your fridge, that's helpful, but at the same time, it doesn't get changes as easily. So, I'd encourage you to keep it as a Google Doc so that you can see what's live and expect that anything on this schedule is going to happen that way. You'll also see down here the meet dates. So you've got April 30, May 7, May 13, and May 22 are the 4 meet days. Okay. And so each day is laid out for you. If those meets get canceled, we typically don't reschedule them because the time that the league gets at the high school stadiums is very limited, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. For example, we have like 2 days the entire spring. We could have hosted a Graciac meet for them. They chose not to use them. Which is fine, but it just shows how tight the schedules are. So, if we get a rain out, it's tough to reschedule an entire track to be available for us to run our hundreds of kids through there. So that's our schedule. Does anyone have a question about this schedule? I mean, it makes a ton of sense to me, but that's not very important. It's most important it makes sense to each of you. So as you look at this, what questions came to your mind? Let's get those out there, because other people may be thinking the same thing. I'm going to try to open up the chat here and see if something's in there. So go ahead. If you have a question, just go ahead and voice it, and I'll try to answer.
Kevin, I can't remember for meet times, which groups start at 4:15 and which start at 5.
Yep. I don't remember right now either, but what we do know is that as we get closer to that time, the coaches will definitely know that, and they'll let everybody know in the weekly email, because each week they're still going to send you an email confirming this schedule and putting in any details that you need to know. So that will be really clear as we get closer to those meets. Okay.
What kind of guidance will the coaches be giving the students, and what events they should try or participate in? Like, my daughter hasn't run middle school track yet, so you can talk.
It's a good question. I don't want to answer for the coaches fully, but in philosophy, they'll probably ask the students from past practice. They'll ask the students, hey, what kinds of things are you interested in? Do you want to be a sprinter? Do you want to be a long distance runner? Do you want to try some of these field events? They'll encourage them to try. If it doesn't seem like a good fit, they'll maybe encourage them to try something else. Their goal is to try to plug the kids into something that, number one, they see will help them with, will be a good fit for their athleticism or some of the things that they noticed about them as a runner. For their length of race, they might notice some things about them that they'll encourage them a certain way, or they'll push them towards a couple of the field events to give them a chance to try to find some success in one of those, and obviously willing to adjust.
Will the 5th and 6th graders be running with the 7th and 8th graders?
Yeah, so Emily has a question here. When does 5th grade practice begin? So first, they will begin on the 29th. So all kids will start on the 29th and the 31st, that second week. We start with 7th and 8th only. And then we get them involved the second week, the 29th and the 31st. So Emily, I hope that answers your question. Another question is, what if my child only takes part in the sprint? Well, we'd first of all encourage you to attempt some field events. There's a lot of options there. So send them early, let them try some of those things. If it turns out it's just not a fit, then you can work with the coaches on finding a solution to what to do with your child. You know, maybe they can assist the coaches at a field event to help them rake the pit or something. If they're not going to do long jump, maybe they can help in some way. So, you know, if you're only going to do a sprint, then, you know, work that out with the coaches. Just send a note to Coach Des and Coach Young and just see what you can work out for that. But we'd encourage people to be involved in those field events. The schedule will be sent to you, multiple sports. Willie, I see that your son is playing baseball as well. Do the best you can. You know, obviously baseball is a pure team sport. So if there's a conflict between track and baseball, it's going to be important to be at baseball because that's a pure team sport. And so where track is a team sport, but it's an individual sport. So we'd encourage, you know, we want you to get to track practices and maybe 1 out of every 3 conflicts, you pick track and you do 2 baseballs. But you're just going to have to communicate, Willie, and other people in that scenario with the coaches so they know what to expect. Don't just be a no-show at one. Make sure that you're communicating well in those scenarios. When do 5th graders select the events they're interested in? Everybody will select the events with the coaches, and they'll be practicing for quite a few weeks before they have to choose their official event. So the coaches will have a lot of time to get to know your child and start to get them in the right spot, and they'll work together with the coach on that. There will be relay teams, and the coaches know which events will have relays, and we will practice specifically relays a couple of days a week during that sprint time, just to make sure that we're able to be attentive to, you know, handoffs and all those sorts of things. What was the last question that was voiced prior to me answering the chat questions? Could that person speak up again, please? Or did I answer it?
The question was, were there going to be relays?
Yeah, and we do have relays. Yeah. Oh, 5th and 6th graders running against 7th and 8th. I think, and Tyler, maybe you can tell us, Tyler, how does that work with the grade levels? Are they doing it by grade level, or is it just purely based on time?
They do it by grade level. So 2 years ago, because last year track was canceled, but 2 years ago, I don't know which order it was, but 5th and 6th, say, would do track events while 7th and 8th did field events. And then at a certain time they would switch. And then, so that 5th and 6th competes only against 5th and 6th.
Got it. They call it juniors and seniors, I believe, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's the terminology.
Yeah, that's the terminology. Yep, that's ringing a bell. And the person who asked about who's first and second for field event sprint, that's clear. I'm sure the coaches make that clear. The juniors are first in something, the seniors are first in the other thing, and then they will switch it. So hopefully that answers those questions. You can participate in track even if you can't make every practice, yes. Obviously, it's important to communicate if you're not going to be at practice. Our coaches are going to be expecting all of the students at practice. And so it's very important, just like in basketball or just like in soccer or something like that, that you're communicating with your coach, because we are responsible for your child and we need to know if they're going to be there or not, or if we're going to count on them or not. And our coaches are all going to kind of have a list. You know, the high jump coach is going to know who's supposed to be there, right? The long jump coach is going to know who's supposed to be there, pole vault. And so they're going to be checking, and we need to know ahead of time if somebody's not going to be there so that we don't think we lost a child somewhere. Okay. So please communicate if they can't be there on a given day. Other questions about the schedule? Okay, so one question that came up in our coach meeting is, what if somebody is a distance runner and a hurdler, for example? Well, on this day, we would tell them to go to the hurdle because it's the only day of the week that the hurdle is happening. Does that make sense to everyone? And then select into the distance on the other 2 days. You know, if they're a hurdler, a pole vaulter, and a distance, I mean, that's a wide range of activities there, but I guess it's possible. Then you just have to pick one a week, you know, do one of each a week. if possible. So, and also just talk to the coaches about that so that we can make sure we're serving that person. Okay, I'm going to move on from the schedule then, and go back to some of the items for us to continue. Please continue to put things in the chat or voice a question if you have one. So I did speak briefly about transport to practice. There's no transportation to meets. Again, we got to make sure we do a good job with our practice transport. We'll have 2 coaches each time. We're going to ask the 7th and 8th graders to help us out leading some of those younger kids and doing a good job for us in the middle of the pack to make sure our group goes to the stadium safely each day. If you don't want them to walk, you're welcome to pick up your child and bring them. It's totally fine to do that. But for those who can't do that, they're going to walk with a group. Spectators, I believe we will have spectators at all of our track meets. So you should be able to plan on going to those. Again, I can't speak for what's going to happen in our society due to COVID, but it is my hope that being outside and spread out in a stadium, we'd be able to manage our spectators in there. So you can plan on that. Obviously, masks are going to be required. We do not know the sport-specific guidelines. I heard a rumor they came out this evening, so we haven't had a chance to dig into them yet. But obviously, we'll let coaches know what those are, and they'll relay that to each of you. Plan on masks being around. I would not plan on masks just based on cross country this fall. I would not plan that we'd have to have masks in our running events, but we'll have to see. I mean, we'll have to see what the MDHS and MHSA have decided about that, and we'll relay that to you as much as possible. But you can plan on your child needing a mask as they're walking around between events and all that kind of stuff. They should probably plan on having a mask on during that whole time. Coach interactions, it's going to be challenging. That's why I wanted our coaches here today. I wanted you to be able to see their face and say hello to them and know who the names are. You know, as you think about who their coach will be, it will be on that sheet that I share with you. But please work with those coaches. It's just tough when you can't interface face to face a lot due to COVID. And so, you know, I want to encourage a couple things with our coaches. Please keep the email clean for our coaches and have your children advocate for the events they want. Okay, that's a great place to test out. Hey, you know, talk to coach about what you want to do. Let them experiment with the challenge of talking to an adult and having those conversations and advocating. Let your child do that. It's a very low stakes situation in middle school athletics, a great place to start learning some of those skills. If you have something to communicate to coach about, you know, an absence or an injury or a schedule question, please email coach about that. But please have your children kind of advocate for those events and things that they're interested in. Trust the coaches. I want to start with just kind of like a benefit of the doubt. You know, we spend a lot of time talking to people and hiring coaches that love kids and that want to be around kids and want to help them grow and improve. And, you know, so give them the benefit of the doubt. Remember that you're hearing things secondhand from the kids. I was just out in the parking lot and I got out of my car and a parent said, "Hey, how many 5th and 6th baseball players are there?" My son said there's 48 baseball players in the gym. I'm like, what? There's 22. Like, but the kid had reported, because it seemed like there was a bunch of kids, that he just said there's 48 kids. And the parent was like, you know, I always half believe my kid. And I thought, you know what, that's a really wise thing. My 3-year-old twins, they already know how to manipulate me, right? They're 3 and they already know how to tell me the story that gets me on their side. And they're 3. So it's just possible that when we hear things secondhand, we might want to investigate that. So my advice to you is ask coach a question if something doesn't seem right. Please don't come at coach with a statement or an accusation of this is this, because then we're just saying our kid is 100% right. And man, in the equation of you, coach, and kid, the place where there's probably a little bit of a mix up is with the kid. So please start by just communicating a question to the coach about something that was brought home, right? The game of telephone is real. And it can get damaging if we put too much at stake with our child's report. So please just check in with coach on those things. We want your child to have a great experience, but please understand in no uncertain terms that great experiences do involve challenge, difficulty, things not going right, and coaches challenging kids. we obviously teach our coaches not to crush kids with their challenges, but at the same time, we do want them to challenge the kids. And it's possible that sometimes kids don't like to be challenged. And so then they say, coach hates me, or coach is a jerk to me. And that just may not be quite 100% true. I just want to put that out there. I know when we name some of these things, it's a little easier for us to move forward. So we want a great experience, but that does include challenge, difficulty, and finding a way to overcome those things. Those are the greatest experiences we have. When things are just really easy, it's just kind of a boring thing and it's not that important. So we want those sorts of experiences in our kids' lives. And let's keep gratitude. I mean, we get to participate this spring as of right now. Our coaches are putting themselves on the line. You can see how many of them we have that want to do this. Give them some love, write them an encouraging note. I can't tell you, being a coach myself, the percentage of emails that are negative or accusatory versus thankful with gratitude. I mean, as a coach, when you get a thankful email, it is like sweet to the soul. I mean, I just can't tell you, like, it is like rejuvenating and wonderful. So if you can spend some time just sending a nice note to a coach, that would be huge. And so please, the gratitude to play and the gratitude for the sacrifice these coaches are making to be a part of our group this spring. I just want to keep that at the forefront. You guys, as parents, have done a fantastic job this year. In the most challenging year we've had, the parents have been the best they've ever been. And I just want you all to know that. If you've participated in another sport, I am blessed to have you be a parent, because you have treated our coaches well. It doesn't mean you've always agreed with them. It doesn't mean that you've always loved all their play calls. I'm certainly not saying that. But at the same time, you've treated them with respect, with gratitude. You've been encouraging 99% of the time. And what a great environment for people to learn and be a coach in. So thank you so much when times are tough, for you to rise to that level instead of sink to the norm of society. So just really appreciate it. Are there any other questions that anyone has about our track program this spring? Somebody wrote rain or shine. Coach will, I think you guys have all seen the Team Snap stuff. So if you don't have Team Snap, make sure you grab Team Snap and get that on your phone. He's sending messages through there, and he will cancel practices or provide more information throughout the day on your Team Snap app. So please be watching that. It's a great communication tool for us, and Coach Des will be in charge of communicating all those things about weather and cancellations and things like that. You said they'll change at the middle school before walking, and then where do they meet up to walk? Okay, so they'll just change in the bathrooms here, meet in the gym lobby right up here, right by my office here, and then the coaches take them out, and they'll need their mask when they walk. Okay, well, if you have anything else, Coach Desmond Young will be emailing you through Team Snap. If you're not receiving those, send him a note. I'll put his email in the chat right now, in case you don't have it. But please email him. He'll get you on the list, get you signed up, and he'll be sending more information out about starting next week. Again, next week is 3 days, and it's 7th and 8th graders only. 5th and 6th starts the following week. So thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. Have a great night, and we'll see you out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting.